There are women who slip into a man's life like a gentle storm, not loud, not chaotic, but unforgettable. The kind of woman who doesn't beg for his attention yet lingers in his memory long after the night has ended, the conversation has faded, or the years have passed. He can't explain why he thinks of her at the strangest times. He just does. And that's the secret most women never learn. The most unforgettable presence isn't built on perfection. It's built on something deeper, something you can't fake, can't package, can't rehearse. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how some people walk into a room and instantly shift the atmosphere? They don't need to say much. They don't need to dress louder than everyone else. But somehow, the energy bends toward them. That's what this is about, the kind of feminine presence that doesn't shout, but whispers directly into the soul. Because here's the truth. He won't remember the woman who tried too hard. He won't remember the woman who built her life around making him comfortable while she quietly disappeared inside herself. But he will remember the one who carried herself like a secret not closed off, but unhurried to be solved. The woman whose laughter felt like freedom. The one who didn't rush to prove her worth because she knew she already had it. This isn't about playing games. It's not about withholding affection or pretending to be someone you're not. No, it's about daring to show up in a way that feels raw, rare, and real. It's about becoming a mirror that reminds him of the things he's forgotten about himself, while also refusing to lose yourself in his reflection. That balance is magnetic. That balance is unforgettable. Maybe you've been through heartbreak. Maybe you've bent yourself into shapes that didn't fit, thinking if you loved hard enough, he'd never leave. Maybe you've carried the heavy ache of being invisible while giving everything. I know what that feels like. And this is where the shift begins, where the woman he can't forget starts to awaken in you. Because the truth is, unforgettable women are not the ones who are the easiest to love. They are the ones who dare to be real, to be deep, to be whole. They are the ones who leave a mark not by being perfect, but by being alive in ways most people are too afraid to be. And if you've ever wondered why some men carry the memory of a woman for years, it's because she touched something beyond the surface. Take a breath with me here. Let the noise of everything you've been told about how to keep a man fade away. Forget the endless rules, the advice columns, the strategies. This isn't about tricks. This is about stepping into a kind of power that has nothing to do with control and everything to do with presence. And if you're listening right now, if you've made it here with me, there's probably a reason. Maybe part of you has always known you are not ordinary. Maybe you've always felt this pulse inside you that says you were meant to be remembered, even if life has tried to convince you otherwise. I promise you that part of you is not wrong. So stay with me. Let's step into this together. And before we dive deeper, I want to invite you, if this is already speaking to something in your soul, if you feel seen, if you feel that ache of recognition, make sure you're part of this space. Subscribe, share this with someone who needs it, and keep coming back, because this isn't just a conversation. It's a remembering. It's a reclaiming. She doesn't chase, not because she's cold, not because she's arrogant, but because she knows that chasing takes her away from herself. And deep down, she refuses to abandon the home she's built within her own soul. That is the first thing that makes her unforgettable. She does not disappear into someone else's life. She brings them into hers. A man feels it, even if he doesn't understand it. He notices the way she looks at him, not with desperation, but with curiosity, as if she's genuinely wondering who he really is beneath the mask he wears for the world. She listens, not to find her place in his story, but to feel the truth of his. And he doesn't know why, but in her presence, he feels more like himself than he has in years. Most women are told that love is about giving endlessly, about being agreeable, about softening themselves until they become water that fills every crack of a man's life. But the woman he can't forget isn't water. She's fire, gentle enough to warm, wild enough to burn, and alive enough to remind him that he too has a soul he's been neglecting. You know this already, don't you? You've felt what it's like to give so much that you vanish. You've tasted the bitter afterthought of being someone's option while you made them your world. And maybe part of you believes that if you just gave a little more, tried a little harder, he would finally see you. But let me tell you this, he doesn't remember the one who gave him everything. He remembers the one who gave him moments that made him feel something real. There is a sacredness in the woman who doesn't perform, who doesn't bend herself into something easier to consume. Her silence carries weight. Her presence lingers after she leaves the room. And when she chooses to share her heart, her thoughts, her body, her laughter, it is not from lack, but from overflow. That is why he cannot explain her, and that is why he cannot forget her. He might try. He might move on. He might build a life with someone else who feels safer, simpler, more predictable. But late at night, when the world grows quiet and his soul starts whispering, she comes back to him. Not in person, but in memory. The way her eyes saw through him. The way her laughter made him feel like he had finally arrived. The way she reminded him that love is not about possession, but awakening. And this is where the shift begins in you. You are not meant to be the woman who chases, who pleads, who bargains with her worth. You are meant to be the woman who is remembered, even when she's gone. The woman who awakens something in a man he cannot bury, no matter how hard he tries. That is power, not control, not manipulation, but presence. Take a moment now. Breathe this in. Let your heart feel it. Because this isn't just about him, it's about you. The truth is, being unforgettable starts long before you meet him. It begins with the way you refuse to betray yourself, with the way you keep your soul alive, even when life tries to numb you, with the way you dare to keep your heart open, even after it's been broken. That is what makes you different. That is what makes you magnetic. And that is what makes you the woman he can't explain, but can't forget. There is something about a woman who knows her own darkness and does not hide it. She does not pretend to be pure light, all smiles and softness. She carries her shadows like secret tattoos beneath her skin. And when she lets a man close enough to see them, he feels the weight of her honesty. That is unforgettable, because so few are brave enough to be that real. You see, most people live on the surface. They talk about the weather, the traffic, their daily routines. But the woman he cannot forget, she cuts deeper, not always with words, but with presence. When she asks, "How are you?" she means it. And when he dares to answer truthfully, when he dares to unravel in front of her, he does not feel judged, he feels seen. That is a rare kind of intimacy, the kind that etches itself into his memory. But here's the paradox. She does not lose herself in his unraveling. She can hold his brokenness without drowning in it. She can listen without needing to fix. She can care without needing to control. And that balance is what haunts him, because he knows it is rare. Have you ever been that woman? Or have you been the one who silences her own needs to hold someone else together? Maybe you've poured yourself so empty that there was nothing left for you. Maybe you thought love was sacrifice, until sacrifice turned into self-erasure. And maybe, just maybe, you're tired of it. Listen closely. The woman who cannot be forgotten is not the one who saves him. She is the one who reminds him to save himself. She is the mirror he cannot look away from, because in her reflection he sees not just who he is, but who he could be. And that is terrifying, intoxicating, unforgettable. He may never tell her this. He may never even fully understand it. But when he thinks of her, he remembers the way she made him feel alive. He remembers the way her presence pulled him out of autopilot. He remembers how her truth made it impossible for him to keep lying to himself. And that kind of impact doesn't fade. It lingers. It whispers. It stays. And yet, she does not give this freely to everyone. Her depth is not a stage where anyone can walk in and perform. She chooses carefully. She protects her energy. She knows her worth is not in how much she gives, but in how authentically she exists. And when she gives, really gives it, is because she wants to, not because she fears losing him. That is why he can't explain her, because she is not like the others. She is not a role he can predict, not a pattern he can slot neatly into his life. She is a story that refuses to be summarized, a presence that refuses to be forgotten. And here is the secret you may need to hear. You don't become unforgettable by trying to be. You become unforgettable the moment you stop abandoning yourself for the sake of being remembered. The moment you choose truth over performance. The moment you choose to let your soul breathe. That is when you begin to carry the kind of presence that cannot be erased. Let that sink in. Let it soften you. Let it remind you that you already hold everything you've been searching for. The question is not, will he remember me? The question is, will I remember myself? And when the answer is yes, he cannot help but carry you with him. She doesn't speak to impress. She speaks to connect. Her words don't feel rehearsed or calculated. They carry the texture of truth. even when they are simple. And he notices. He notices because so much of the world feels like noise, like endless chatter meant to fill the silence. But when she talks, the silence does not disappear. It deepens. That is another reason he cannot forget her. With her, silence is not heavy. It does not demand to be filled. It feels alive, charged, like something sacred. He remembers the pause between her sentences, the way her presence filled the room without her needing to push. That stillness, that rare comfort with herself becomes magnetic. She is not afraid to laugh at herself, not in a way that seeks approval, but in a way that shows she is human, unpolished, beautifully real. And in a world full of people hiding behind masks, he cannot help but remember the one who dared to be imperfect, the one who made imperfection feel like freedom. And yes, she can be soft, she can be tender, she can rest her head on his shoulder and let her guard down. But what makes her unforgettable is that her softness is not weakness, it is a choice. She can stand on her own, and that is exactly why it feels so powerful when she chooses to lean. He feels it in the marrow of his bones. She doesn't need him, she wants him. And there is a world of difference in that. Tell me, has anyone ever wanted you without needing to possess you? Have you ever felt the kind of love that didn't suffocate, didn't demand you shrink yourself, but instead invited you to breathe wider? That is what he feels with her. And that is why she stays in his memory like a song he cannot stop humming. But let me tell you something important. She is not unforgettable because she is some mythical goddess beyond reach. She is unforgettable because she is human fiercely, vulnerably human in a world where most are too afraid to be. Her laughter carries both joy and sorrow. Her eyes hold both light and shadow. And when she looks at him, he feels the weight of someone who has lived, who has broken, who has healed, and who has not lost her fire. That is what terrifies him the most. Because forgetting her would mean forgetting that such depth exists. Forgetting her would mean silencing the part of himself that woke up in her presence. And once awakened, that part of him refuses to die quietly. So here you are, listening, maybe feeling the stir of something inside you. Maybe remembering a time you silenced your own fire. Maybe realizing that you have lived too long trying to be easy to love, instead of daring to be unforgettable. And maybe, just maybe, this is the moment you choose differently, because the woman he cannot explain but cannot forget does not try to become her. She remembers she already is her. She carries mystery, but not the kind born from playing games or hiding pieces of herself. Her mystery comes from depth, from the fact that she is always unfolding, even to herself. A man feels it the moment he's around her that no matter how much he learns, there will always be more to discover. Not because she is secretive, but because she is alive in ways that cannot be fully captured. Think of the people who give themselves away too quickly, who rush to hand over every piece of their story just to secure closeness. Their mystery disappears, not because they are shallow, but because they are afraid of being left unseen. The unforgettable woman doesn't rush. She shares slowly, intentionally. She reveals herself like turning the pages of a book, not to withhold, but to allow the story to breathe. That is what keeps him coming back, again and again, even when he's no longer in her life. And here's the part most miss. Her mystery is not just about what she holds back, but about the way she sees the world. She notices things he doesn't. The way the rain makes the streetlights look like they're trembling. The way someone's voice cracks when they're holding back tears. The way small details carry entire stories. When he's with her, he starts to see the world differently too. And even when she's gone, he still carries that vision. But don't mistake this depth for heaviness. She knows how to laugh until her sides hurt, how to dance barefoot in the kitchen, how to find joy in the smallest, simplest things. That balance, depth and lightness, shadow and laughter is what makes her unforgettable. Because with her, life feels more alive. Have you ever felt that before? Someone who made ordinary days feel like something sacred. Someone who made time stretch, who made you feel the texture of your own life more vividly. That's what she does. Not because she tries to, but because her presence makes space for it. And yet, she is not perfect. Far from it. She has her scars, her doubts, her fears. But here's the secret. She does not cover them up to seem stronger. She lets them breathe. She lets them exist. And in doing so, She gives him permission to let his own scars exist too. That is why he cannot forget her. Because being with her was not about pretending to be whole. It was about daring to be real. And that's the paradox. She leaves a mark by never trying to leave one. She becomes unforgettable by simply living her truth. And he, whether he admits it or not, carries her with him because she touched the part of him that is most human. So as you hear this, let it settle into you. This isn't about becoming something you are not. It's about returning to what you already are. It's about remembering that your scars, your laughter, your mystery, your truth, they are not things you need to hide. They are the very things that make you unforgettable. She doesn't demand to be chosen. That's what sets her apart. She knows that begging for love twists it into something it was never meant to be. She understands that real love cannot be forced, cannot be bargained for. So she does something most people are too afraid to do. She lets go when she is not met. And in that letting go, she becomes unforgettable. Because think about it, how many times do people cling, even when the connection is dying? How many times do they fight to stay visible in someone's eyes, even as they vanish in their own? The woman he can't forget doesn't cling. She knows her worth too well to beg for scraps. She would rather walk away with her soul intact than stay in a place where she is shrinking. And here's the truth he cannot escape. When she walks away, she doesn't slam doors or burn bridges with loud explosions. She leaves quietly, with grace. And that silence echoes louder than any anger could. He feels the absence of her presence like a room that has suddenly gone cold. And even if he fills that space with someone else, he knows deep down it is not the same. This doesn't mean she doesn't hurt. Of course she does. She feels heartbreak deeply, she just refuses to let it make her small. She allows the ache, but she does not collapse under it. She carries it, learns from it, lets it shape her without destroying her. And that resilience, that refusal to let pain define her, becomes part of the story he cannot forget. There's something haunting about a woman who knows how to leave. Not in bitterness, not in rage, but with dignity. A woman who can say, "I love you, but I love myself more." That is not something a man forgets. That is the sentence that replays in his mind long after she's gone. Have you ever been there? Have you ever walked away from someone you loved because you knew you could not keep losing yourself just to keep them? It hurts like fire, but it also births a power that no one can take from you. That is the power of the unforgettable woman. And when she leaves, she doesn't vanish into nothing. She rebuilds, she reclaims, she blooms again, maybe even brighter. And he sees it sometimes from afar, sometimes in silence, and it stirs something in him. Regret, admiration, a longing he cannot put into words. Because he realizes too late that she was not just another woman. She was the chapter that defined his story. And that is why he cannot explain her. That is why he cannot forget her. But let me whisper this into your heart. You don't need to be remembered to be worthy. You don't need to live inside anyone else's memory to matter. The beauty of becoming unforgettable is that it begins with remembering yourself. And when you do that, whether he carries you with him or not, you will always carry you. She loves differently. Not with possession, not with the constant fear of losing, but with presence. When she loves fully in the moment, and that is why he cannot forget it. Because so many people love half-heartedly, love with conditions, love with walls up. But her love, it feels like the sun on his skin after years of winter. But here's what makes it even more powerful. She does not hand over her love as currency, hoping to be repaid with commitment. She loves because it is who she is. Because her heart, no matter how many times it has been broken, refuses to close. And he feels that. He feels the weight of a love that is given freely, not to bind him, but to set him free. And once a man tastes that kind of love, no other love feels quite the same. Still, she is not naive. She knows love is not enough if respect is missing, if trust is broken, if she must constantly abandon herself to keep it alive. So while she loves deeply, she also guards her soul. She refuses to let her love be used as a reason to stay in places where she is unseen. And that paradox of a heart wide open and boundaries made of steel is what makes her unforgettable. He cannot explain it. He might tell himself it was her beauty, her smile, the way she carried herself. But deep down, he knows it was something far greater. It was the way she made him feel alive. It was the way she mirrored back the truth of who he was and who he could be. It was the way her presence felt like both a home and a challenge. And that combination is impossible to erase. And if you are listening now, maybe you feel it stirring inside you. The ache of recognition, the quiet whisper that says, "This is who I am, too." Maybe you've hidden that love away because it felt too much, too big, too vulnerable. Maybe you've dimmed it down because someone told you it was overwhelming. But I want you to hear me clearly. The love you carry is not too much. It is the very thing that makes you unforgettable. Take a breath here. Let that truth sink in. Let it remind you that you do not need to twist yourself into someone smaller, easier, safer, to be loved. You only need to be who you already are. Because the woman he cannot forget does not beg for recognition. She embodies it. She doesn't demand loyalty. She inspires it. She doesn't force herself to be remembered. She simply lives so fully, so authentically, that forgetting her becomes impossible. And maybe this is the moment you realize you don't need to become her. You already are her. You just need to remember. There is a softness in the way she carries her pain. Not hidden, not flaunted, but woven into her presence, like threads of gold in dark fabric. He senses it, even if she never speaks of it, that she has walked through fire and yet still chooses to love. And that choice, that defiance against bitterness, is what makes her unforgettable. Because so many grow cold. They build walls so high that no one can touch them. They mistake numbness for strength. But she refuses to close her heart. She lets it break open again and again, knowing that each fracture has only made her deeper. And when he looks at her, he sees it. He sees the strength it takes to still believe in love, to still believe in beauty, after everything she's endured. That is why she lingers in his memory. Not because she was untouched by life, but because she was transformed by it. She carries resilience without hardness, wisdom without cynicism, and it haunts him, because he knows how rare that is. Sometimes, he will wonder where she found that strength. He will wonder how she kept her soul alive in a world that tries to numb it. He will wonder why he felt more like himself in her presence than in the safety of his own routines. And though he may never find the words, he will know this. She touched something in him that he cannot bury. And you who are listening, maybe you know what that feels like. To hold your own pain in silence. To wonder if your scars make you less lovable. To hide them, thinking they are too heavy for anyone else to carry. But hear me now. Your scars do not make you less unforgettable. They are the very thing that makes you radiant. Because they are proof you have lived, proof you have endured, proof you still choose love when you could have chosen fear. That is the paradox of unforgettable women. They are not remembered for being flawless. They are remembered for being real, for allowing their brokenness to become beauty, for daring to be vulnerable in a world that worships armor. And when he remembers her, he doesn't think of perfection. He remembers the way her eyes softened when he revealed his own wounds. He remembers the way she didn't turn away, the way she didn't flinch at his mess. He remembers how she made him feel safe enough to be human, and that kind of memory doesn't fade. So let this echo inside you. You do not have to erase your pain to be unforgettable. You do not have to be perfect. You only have to be willing to live with your heart open. That alone makes you the kind of woman he can't explain, but can never forget. There is a freedom in the way she lives, and it unsettles him in the best way. She is not waiting for permission to exist. She is not sitting on the sidelines of her own life, hoping someone will choose her before she chooses herself. She moves, she dreams, she creates, she laughs with or without him. And that freedom is intoxicating, because here's what few people admit. Dependency is forgettable. It blends into the background. But freedom? Freedom leaves an imprint. When he sees her building a life that lights her up, he feels the weight of his own unlived life pressing down on him. And long after she's gone, he will remember her not only for how she loved him, but for how she loved her life. This doesn't mean she doesn't want closeness. It doesn't mean she doesn't value intimacy. But her intimacy is richer because it comes from choice, not from need. She is the woman who can walk beside him, but also walk without him. And that balance, that refusal to collapse into another person, is why he cannot forget her. Have you ever noticed how some people lose themselves the moment they fall in love? Their hobbies disappear, their friendships fade, their dreams shrink until all that's left is their partner. And then, when it ends, they don't just lose a person, they lose themselves. The unforgettable woman doesn't do this. She keeps her soul alive. She keeps her passions burning. She holds on to the pieces of herself that make her whole. And here's the paradox. It is exactly that wholeness that draws him closer. He doesn't forget her because she didn't make him her world. She reminded him that he was just one star in her sky, not the entire universe. And strangely, that made him want to be part of her world even more. Sometimes he will try to explain it to himself. He will say it was her smile, her confidence, her energy. But the truth is, it was her freedom. The way she lived fully, unapologetically, unshakably. The way she didn't wait for love to rescue her, but invited it to walk alongside her already vibrant life. And if you're listening now, maybe you need this reminder. You do not have to shrink to be loved. You do not have to fold yourself into the corners of someone else's story. The more you live your own life, the more unforgettable you become. Because no one forgets the woman who reminded them of possibility. No one forgets the woman who showed them what it looks like to be alive. So let this truth anchor in you. The woman he can't explain but can't forget is not the one who revolved around him. She is the one who revolved around her own light. And in doing so, illuminated his. There's something about the way she carries herself in love, not as if it is her only identity, but as if it is a part of a much larger, richer tapestry. He notices it. He notices how she can be fully present with him and still belong to herself. And that unsettles him, because most of the time, he's only known women who disappear into the role of girlfriend, wife, or lover. But she refuses to disappear. She remains whole, and wholeness is magnetic. It means that when she gives her time, it feels like a gift, not an obligation. When she shares her body, it feels like devotion, not desperation. When she opens her heart, it feels like grace, not performance. He feels the difference, even if he cannot articulate it. He knows this is not the kind of love that comes from emptiness. This is love that comes from abundance. But here is what he will never admit out loud. It terrifies him, because to love a woman like this means he cannot hide. He cannot pretend. He cannot rely on her to build the whole relationship while he drifts. She awakens him to himself, and awakening is not always comfortable. Sometimes it feels like being set on fire. And yet, even if he pulls away, even if he chooses a safer path, she will remain in his memory. He will think of her when he is older, when his days feel predictable, when his spirit aches for the kind of aliveness he once tasted with her, and he will wonder if he could have been braver. You may have felt this, too, that people fear the very love they crave. They long for depth but cling to safety. They dream of freedom but choose comfort. And in that tension, unforgettable women often find themselves remembered but not always kept. But here's what makes her different. She does not break herself to be kept. She does not dilute her fire just to be easier to hold. She knows that if he cannot rise to meet her, she will walk on. Not because she is cold, but because she refuses to forget herself. And that, ironically, is why he will never forget her. Take a moment and let that truth breathe inside you. You are not unforgettable because someone keeps you. You are unforgettable because you refuse to keep losing yourself. You are unforgettable because you dare to love without disappearing, to give without erasing, to stay soft without breaking. And he may never find the words for it, but the truth will haunt him. She was the one he could not explain, the one who slipped past logic and lived in his soul. She is unforgettable because she loves with edges. Her tenderness is not blind, it is awake. She can hold a man with compassion, but she can also look him in the eyes and say, "Number, that is not love. That is not enough." And he will never forget the way her voice sounded in those moments, steady, unwavering, filled with truth. Because most people settle. Most people let love become a negotiation of scraps. They bite their tongue. They silence their truth. They bend themselves until they barely recognize the woman staring back in the mirror. But not her. She does not beg to be loved right. She expects it. And she knows that if it is not given, she will leave. He cannot explain why that lingers inside him. Why the memory of her boundaries feels just as powerful as the memory of her touch. But he knows that it does. He knows that part of him respected her even more for walking away than he did when she stayed. Because she showed him something most people never dare to show. That love without respect is not love at all. And maybe you know what that feels like. Maybe you've stayed too long in places where you were half loved. Maybe you've believed that endurance made you worthy. that if you could just hold out a little longer, they would see you. But the unforgettable woman, she doesn't wait to be seen. She sees herself first, and because of that, she cannot be erased. He will remember her not just for the way she made him feel, but for the way she refused to abandon herself. He will remember the moments when she said no with a softness that was stronger than anger. He will remember the way her absence taught him more about love than her presence ever could. And here is where her power lies. She does not live to be remembered. She lives to be true. And it is her truth that leaves fingerprints on his soul. Not her beauty, not her charm, not even her love, but her truth. The kind that cannot be bargained with, the kind that cannot be forgotten. So if you are listening now, let this reach the part of you that has been quiet for too long. The part of you that knows you have silenced yourself just to be chosen. The part that has swallowed your truth in exchange for closeness. You don't have to do that anymore. Your boundaries do not make you less lovable. They make you unforgettable. Because when you love with edges, when you let your no be as sacred as your yes, you stop being explainable, and you start being unforgettable. What he remembers most is not what she did for him, but how he felt in her presence. That is the secret. People forget favors. They forget sacrifices. They forget the ways you bent yourself to make them comfortable. But they never forget the way you made them feel when they were with you. And with her, he felt alive. He felt awake. He felt like the version of himself he always wanted to be, but rarely allowed himself to become. It wasn't that she gave him permission, it was that her presence was so honest, so unfiltered, that he could not help but be honest too. That is why she lingers in his memory, because she drew out the man he wanted to remember. She didn't do it by forcing. She didn't nag. She didn't control. She didn't demand. She simply embodied her own truth so fully that he could not help but rise toward it. And even when he fell short, even when he pulled away, he could not erase the taste of what it felt like to be with her. And this is what makes her unforgettable. She was not a fantasy. She was not a mask. She was real. She carried her laughter, her pain, her strength, her softness, all of it without apology. And he will compare every woman after her to that feeling, whether he admits it or not. Not because she was perfect, but because she was true. Have you ever noticed how the ones who perform, the ones who pretend, fade from memory, but the ones who dared to be raw, to be genuine, to be messy and alive, those are the ones who haunt us, because we recognize ourselves in them. We remember the way they reminded us of who we are beneath all the masks we wear. That is what she did for him. That is why he cannot explain her, because she was not a chapter in his story that could be neatly closed. She was a mirror, a wake-up call, a glimpse of a deeper life. And even if he tries to forget, even if he buries himself in routines, her memory will slip through the cracks when he least expects it. And here is the truth you need to hold. You do not become unforgettable by bending yourself into someone else's shape. You become unforgettable the moment you live as if you belong to yourself first. You become unforgettable when your presence awakens life in those around you, not because you try to, but because you refuse to dim your own light. So breathe. Let this reminder anchor in your chest. The woman he can't explain but can't forget is not a role you play. It is the truth you embody. And the more you dare to live it, the more unforgettable you become, whether he ever finds the courage to admit it or not. Unforgettable women leave traces. Not the kind you can touch. Not the kind that show up in photographs or souvenirs, but the kind that settle quietly into memory. The kind that change the way a man breathes when he thinks of her. It might be the way she leaned back in her chair and laughed without holding anything back. It might be the way she looked at him when he said something vulnerable, as if nothing about him could scare her away. It might be the way she walked out of the room with her head high, reminding him that her worth was never tied to whether he kept her. These are small things, but they matter, because they are not performances, they are truths. She was not trying to be unforgettable. She simply was. And that is the irony: the harder someone tries to be remembered, the more quickly they fade. But the one who refuses to perform is the one who stays. Sometimes he will try to explain it to himself. He will say, it was her beauty, or it was the timing, or it was the chemistry. But deep down, he knows it was none of those things. It was her essence. The way she existed in the world without apology. The way she made ordinary moments feel heavy with meaning. The way she carried both tenderness and strength as if they belonged together. And here's the part he will never fully understand. She was not trying to be remembered by him. She was remembering herself. And that is what made her unforgettable. If you're listening now, maybe you've forgotten yourself in love before. Maybe you've poured so much of yourself into someone else that you woke up one day feeling empty. Maybe you've believed that being unforgettable meant being everything they wanted. But the truth is, the opposite is what makes you unforgettable. You are remembered when you stop abandoning yourself. When you breathe into your own life so deeply that your presence lingers in theirs. So the question is not, how do I become unforgettable to him? The question is, how do I remember myself so fully that no one who meets me can forget? And that answer does not come from effort. It comes from allowing yourself to live without apology, without performance, without disappearing. That is the woman he cannot explain. That is the woman who becomes a shadow in his thoughts, a warmth in his memory, a question that will echo long after she has left. She is unforgettable not because she tried to be, but because she dared to exist fully. And now, maybe it's time for you to let yourself exist fully too. There comes a moment when he realizes he cannot replace her. He can find someone else, yes. Someone who smiles the way she smiled. Someone who holds his hand. Someone who shares his bed. But it won't feel the same. Because what made her unforgettable was never about surface details. It was about soul. And souls cannot be replicated. He will try, of course. He will move on. He will convince himself that time will do its work. That memory will fade. But late at night, when the world grows quiet, he will hear echoes of her laughter in the back of his mind. He will feel the ghost of her presence in the spaces no one else can touch. And he will wonder why she lingers, why she will not leave him, even though she is long gone. The truth is, she lingers because she changed him. She did not just walk into his life, she shifted it. She cracked something open in him that cannot be closed again. And even if he tries to forget her, he cannot forget the version of himself that he became in her presence. That is the real reason he carries her with him. And here is the part most people don't understand. She does not linger because she clung to him. She does not linger because she made herself his world. She lingers because she refused to be erased, even by herself. She loved him, but she loved herself enough to walk away if she had to. And that balance of devotion and self-respect is what burns itself into memory. Maybe you have felt the sting of wondering if you were enough to be remembered. Maybe you feared that once you walked away, you would vanish from his heart like smoke. But hear this clearly. When you live in truth, when you refuse to abandon yourself, you cannot be erased. You become part of the architecture of his soul. Whether he ever says it, whether he ever admits it, you remain. And perhaps the most powerful part of all is this. She does not wait to be remembered. She does not live to be a haunting. She goes on. She blooms. She writes new chapters, finds new joys, creates new worlds. She leaves behind not a wound, but a lesson. Not a shadow, but a reminder. And he, wherever he is, carries the quiet ache of knowing that he will never meet another quite like her. That is why she is unforgettable. That is why he cannot explain her. And that is why, when the years pass and faces blur together, hers will still rise like a flame in the dark. She is unforgettable because she never begged to be. She simply lived in a way that imprinted itself on the soul. He will remember her not only in the sharp moments, the laughter, the touch, the silence, but in the small details that seemed unimportant at the time. The way she stirred her coffee slowly, as if she had all the time in the world. The way she tilted her head when she was truly listening. The way she walked into a room without needing to take it over. And yet, somehow, it bent toward her anyway. What he cannot explain is that she felt like both freedom and home. Freedom, because she refused to be caged, because her spirit was too vast to be confined by anyone else's expectations. Home, because in her presence, he felt seen, felt safe, felt like he could finally set down the armor he carried everywhere else. How do you put that into words? You don't. You just remember. Years from now, when his life has taken him down roads she never walked with him, he will stumble across something, a song, a scent, a line in a book, and suddenly she will be there. Not her body, not her voice, but her essence. The memory of what it felt like to be alive around her. And that will be enough to bring back the ache, the longing, the question of what might have been, if only he had been braver. But here is the beauty. She does not live her life waiting to be someone's ghost. She does not measure her worth by whether or not she lingers in his memory. She continues forward, carrying her fire, her scars, her laughter. She becomes her own unforgettable story, whether or not he ever speaks her name again. And maybe this is what you need to hear. Your power is not in being remembered by him. Your power is in remembering yourself, in building a life so full, so rich, so unapologetically yours, that whether he carries you in his soul or not, you will always carry you. That is the true essence of the woman he cannot explain. She is unforgettable not because he says she is, but because she knows she is. So let this truth sit with you. You are not waiting to be chosen. You are not waiting to be remembered. You already are the kind of woman who leaves traces that no man, no time, no silence can erase. And the only question left is whether you will dare to live as her.